Welcome, friends. It's Donetta here at A Life Uncommon. Come and hang out with me if you like while we do a little stitching today. I'm going to work on an old pair of moccasin tops. Oh my goodness, I must have started these 10 years ago and just never finished it. Been trying to come up with a topic for today's video, and I was encouraged to follow my passion. So my passion is to work on jobs that have got started and left aside for a long time. I haven't done very much seed bead, so let's work on a little bit of a UFO. Some moccasin tops that I started probably 10 or 15 years ago. Welcome, come on in. We'll start here at my work table. These are an old pair of moccasin tops that I started, and I never finished them. And now it's a challenge to find the beads that I used. I used a pair of calipers. This is a wonderful little tool. And I measured the bead size on here. And what I came up with is that they're a size 10. And the closest I could find are these silver-lined orange. They're not going to match exactly, but let's go ahead and work on this and try to finish these up and get them on a pair of moccasins. I had a pair of needles. I was running 2 needle on this. I wanted to introduce you to the tools, the calipers for measuring. You zero them out. They can measure outside or they can measure inside. Calipers are a really important tool for any bead artist. This here is called a thread zapper. And a thread zapper uses a battery powered heat to burn and melt your threads. This is something that I would highly recommend if you're going to do any kind of embroidery beading. What happens is you tie off your threads, and then when you use the zapper on it, it melts it down to where it doesn't come out of your backing. So I'm running 2 needle. I've got 1 threaded. I'm going to bring you over here and show you what it's like for me to thread my needle. I have my thread on a spool at my far left, and I can just grab it, thread a needle. I'm running a 10 sharp short, and then I just can hold my needle out and go right back over to the spool and trim it off. Now, these scissors are magnetic, and what's really nice about them is they have a tooth on them that will cut monofilament very nicely. Not all scissors will cut monofilament well, and if you're having a fight cutting your monofilament, may I suggest getting a pair of scissors like these. I got them years ago on Amazon, so I don't know that I could send you a link. Now you could clip this off, but another way to do it is to burn the bottom, is to burn them with your thread zapper. And what that does is it gives a little ball on the end just past the knot, and that keeps it from coming undone. Let's go back down to the table. So I'm running 2 needles, and I need to start my work here. Now, 1 needle, I'm going to load it Now I know that these silver lined are not going to be the same as the rainbow finish that I had on there, but they'll be the same size and the same color palette, so I'm counting that a win. These are some old size tins that I had before I started collecting the 11s. And what I do is I'll load my top thread. Now I want to preface this with, I was not raised on reservation. I didn't know my birth father. I am self-taught. There was no internet, no YouTube back in the day when I started learning how to bead. So I'm just showing you how I did it, and I know to many of you who are taught and have been gifted the knowledge from the elders that you have better ways. I have no doubt about that. So I'm just prefacing, this is just the way I taught myself to do it. If you want to share a knowledge that's different, I encourage you to do so. So I have my loaded thread on this side. I keep my thumb against it. I've got my other needle in the back, already anchored. And I know this is going to drive some of you crazy having two different bead finishes, but if I can accept it, then maybe you can too. It's not the ideal. It's kind of a bummer, but I kind of feel like just finishing these just out of respect for the work that I did. So I hold my beads up with my thumb, and my fingers look like this on the back. My fingers are the stop for the bead needles. And what I do is I press it up tight. I know this is not the way your elders probably taught you. Consider yourself really lucky that you had your elders in your life. And if you so want to, please be my guest and teach the knowledge. I'm just showing how I learned. So anyway, I thought I'd sit here this afternoon and try to do my best to duplicate these two pieces and get them on my moccasins. I have some slippers that my husband bought me when I was in the wheelchair. Many years ago, I started doing these for those slippers, and I wound up just never finishing it. You know why? Because I looked at it and I thought, well, this isn't very good. And I judged my work instead of looking at it for the passion that it brought. I've been hindered by judgment, mostly of my own. From other folk, I let it get to me too much. But I just wanted to come and try to overcome my own judgment and the judgment of others by doing my work. Now, depending on the item, these are for moccasin tops, from slipper tops. They're not going to get as heavy a wear as some other things. Say if you were making dancing shoes, you'd want to really go maybe every bead practically. I do every 2 beads. It's my common. And the most important thing on this is I have my outline here, and the needle angle. You want to always have your needle trying to show you that, upright to your work. Perpendicular, I believe is the term, to your work. And when you take your needle up and down, you want to keep it straight as an arrow facing the sky. I've got a bead grip on here, a spring grip holding the beads because my hands get real tired. Like I say, I'm just self-taught. I'm just welcoming you into my studio, and I thank you for joining me today. What's on your desk today? Are you working on something? Leave a picture down in the comments. I'm running Old World Check. These size 10s are probably 60-year-old beads. Now I could cull them and make everything as close as I can, and I do that sometimes if I want the work to look culled. But these are more intentionally made to be more rustic. That's my excuse, and I'm sticking to it. Har har. I need to pull this out of there. Alright, I loaded that up. I'm going to put the spring back on it, giving myself a little bit of room. I'm going to pinch that. Here's my running needle on the back side. I need to bring him over about there. What's really important is that needle straight up and straight down. Another thing that's important is your tension. Just bring that thread down to rest. You don't have to torque on it. If you torque on it, it'll make it lay low. See how I kind of lay it down inside where it's got to go. Depending on the wear that the item's going to get that you're doing this to, you bead every second or every third bead. If it's going to get a lot of wear, and you're afraid that, like the dancing shoes, it's going to come undone, do every bead if you need to. And what you can do is you can do every second bead for maybe 6 or 8 beads, and then go back and do every single bead if you want. But if you're doing every bead, mind you, that thread in between the beads is going to take up some space, so you got to take that into consideration. I'm running 2 needle. My upper needle has got both needles are 10 short sharps. I'm running on Pellon. I don't remember the number on it. It was 925 or 725, but on stiff Pellon. The outline of the design is done in pencil. A crimp spring on just below the beads. I leave a little bit of room because as you turn, you use up more thread. Because these are moccasin tops, they're going to have a lot of wear. So I tend to go every second bead. I'm pushing up with my left thumbnail, bringing the needle in and out at a perpendicular. I'm keeping it level to the fabric. I'm not, okay, so if your fabric's here, I'm keeping it straight up and down. Be careful not to lean it one way or another as you put your needle in, because that's what'll throw your line off. So I'm just sitting here beading these moccasin tops, thinking about ways in which we teach ourselves to do things. Now, even though I am Native American, I find it difficult to learn, because not having elders, I had to teach myself, but I had the passion, so I just did the best that I can. So when you see me doing things, you know, I find myself qualifying my mind constantly, trying to make this video, and that's been one of the hardest problems. I forget that I just need to simply be myself. Now, there are people who have very strong feelings about folks that are not Native American selling their work as Native American, and I agree, that's a problem. I think there's a level of respect to be had that you do not take somebody else's patterns. You try to be original to yourself or ask permission. But I know there's a lot of you who find beadwork beautiful who may not be Native American, and you may be from other countries. Welcome. This is a teaching site for all. We're all here learning, loving the passion of beading. I'm holding my fabric where my needle, my fingers, my back of my fingers are guiding my needle. And I'm just going round about every 2 beads, tacking down with my upper needle. Now, if you're using finer beads, these are a size 10, so I've got double thread. But if you're using finer beads, like 11 or smaller, you can just run this needle single thread. And then there's another trick you can do, is you can run your tacking needle with a finer thread, say a 2-pound or a 3-pound. And then my upper needle that's holding my beads is going to go down, and I'm holding it to where it's not at an angle, and I just pull that last bead through. Now, this is not the fine work that regalia makers do. I know, girls. I'm just a novice. So I'm going to load up this thread, this upper thread, whichever one's longer I take turns with. You can use these 2 running threads back and forth. One being one time maybe it's your loading needle, and the next time perhaps it's the tacking needle. But what's on your board today? Are you folks working on anything in particular? So I'm just loading this enough to where when I lay it down inside the pattern, it'll sit there while I tack it down. And I don't take this one back down through the thread until I'm all done, because you might have to add a couple more beads, or you might have to take off some. I find that putting my beads flat on a padded board helps me a lot to pick up. I've been needing to get new glasses, so I haven't been doing a lot of seed beading. I use a crimp, little spring crimp on the thread, but give yourself a little bit of space there, because when you go around the corner you're going to use up that thread. Lay it down inside the thing, pick up your other needle. I always do an outline, and then I fill in the outline. People wonder, they start from the center and go outward, or vice versa. It depends on the design. On a flower, I tend to do the outline and then fill it in. But my work is much more rustic. I'm not perfecting my work to make it look flawless. I kind of bead old style. I enjoy a lot of different kinds of beadwork. It's something to finally finish up these moccasins after all these years. My husband bought me a really nice pair of leather moccasins when I was wheelchair bound. And I never finished them because I wound up having surgeries and just now getting back to my table to do this today. You ever feel discouraged with your work? Like you find yourself comparing? Well, I find myself thinking as a teacher, what right have I to teach? Because there's so many of you that are much more proficient than I am. But I'm just doing my thing. I hope y'all do your thing. My son makes my videos, or edits the videos for me, and he's been waiting for a new round of some raw footage to come in, and so I thought I'd sit today and just enjoy your company. So the inner of that flower's done. When you turn over, what you'll find are your two needles have met. Your two running needles. They've met in the center right here. This one needs to be trimmed. So if they were meeting closer, I might tie them off together. But I noticed this is going in between that thread. It's good to pay attention to the back of your work. But unless you're in competition with yourself or in a competition, you don't have to do it perfectly. You just do the best you can and enjoy yourself. Alright, this is a thread zapper. This is a wonderful little tool, and what it does is it melts down your knot so it doesn't come undone. Now I've got to run another thread here. My thread is up on my left side. The spool lays on its side on a pegboard hook. This is how I thread my needle. I anchor my ring finger and my little finger, and I needle my thread. I don't thread my needle. I put the needle onto the thread. That's a big thing that makes the world of difference when you're sewing, is little tricks like that. You don't thread a needle, you needle the thread. You play around with the thread and needle and you'll see what I mean. Just showing you how my hands are working. Okay, so instead of just cutting this off, I'm going to use my thread zapper because this is monofilament. And what that'll do is it'll melt and it'll create a little ball on the end, and that ball won't go through your fabric. So I'm going to bring this back up, and because it's a longer thread, I now am going to use this to be my thread for my beads. I'm going to leave the other one in the back for now, out of my way. And I'm going to load up to go around the inner of this flower. You just fill in the space. It's like coloring. You just coloring with seed beads and needle and thread. Take the needle that you load the beads on all the way down through. On the back, the two threads are coming out near each other. And if you want, there's no rule against it. As long as it's on something heavy like pellin like this, you can just tie those two together. I don't usually do that because it can leave a lump. You just come on back. Cut this out. Load her back up with thread. But anyway, that's just a little take on doing 2 needle. I hope that helps somebody, and know that it may not be the way that the elders did it. I didn't get to have an elder, but I hope to be an elder for someone else someday. Well, God bless you. Have a good one. Thank you for joining me at Life Uncommon. Bye, friends.